Hey, what's up YouTube? It's Steve, and I'm back with a new video. Today I'm going to be doing my first impressions of the Galaxy Note 3. And the way I'm actually going to do this is do a two-part series, with this first part being things that I dislike, with a second part that details things that I do like. I just think that the video would be absolutely too long if it was all put together. So I hope you guys enjoy both parts of this series. So if you've been following my channel for a year or more, you know that about 14 months ago I purchased the Galaxy S3. That phone was probably the best phone that I'd ever owned. Just a lot of good things about it. And that was around November of 2012. The phone was good until around the summer of last year. And around that time I started having an issue. I don't know if you guys remember, but the S3 used to have a feature where you could swipe up from the bottom and it would show you different things like the news or different whatever things that you set into it. Well, my S3 developed an issue where every time I'd swipe up, the phone would reboot. And after doing that so many times, it actually cut off and stopped working. And so I had to send it in, ended up getting a replacement. And the replacement was okay at first, but then I started having major issues with the battery draining. And then when Android 4.3 came out and it was released for the S3, battery usage got worse, and it was to the point to where just going to work, and I live 30 minutes away from where I work, so just in that 30-minute drive with the phone in standby, I would lose 3 to 5% just in 30 minutes. So basically most of the day I was sitting there tethered to a charger. So I really got aggravated, tired of that, and it's time for an upgrade. So like I said, upgraded to this. It was really my choice between the Note 3 and the iPhone 5. And while it would have been good to get the iPhone, it would have been completely immersive as far as having a MacBook Pro and an iPad, would have had an iPhone. The bottom line is the screen was just absolutely too small for me. I mean, I already had an S3, which I think it was a 4.5-inch screen, and I really didn't want to go backwards. So I decided to go forward with this here, and this certainly does not disappoint. So what I want to do is just talk about some things that I like as well as things that I dislike. And as usual, I'm going to go ahead and get the bad stuff out of the way first. So let's get to it. Alright, so the first dislike that I have with this phone is the speakers. I mean, the speakers are absolutely too small for this phone. You'd think with a 5.7-inch screen this thing would be blasting sound. I kind of prefer if it has something similar to what the HTC One has, with the speaker across the top and the bottom that face me. That way I can actually hear it. But the way this phone is set up, it's got one tiny speaker here. And the bad thing is, if you're holding it, I have a habit of holding the phone like this. And if my finger happens to slide over, I'm going to get muffled sound. The speakers, don't get me wrong, they're passable. They're just the fact that it's one, and if you happen to cover it, you're going to get, your audio is going to be completely muffled. That's the only thing that I really don't like about it. Here's an example. So say for instance we queue up a YouTube video, watching it. Hey, what's up YouTube? It's Mr. Stevie J893, and I'm back again with another video. And in this video I'm going to be doing an you see this is max volume.
Of the ZadKeys Profolio Apple iPad.
But if my finger covers that up, you can't really hear much of anything.
And 4.
So I mean, as you hear, it is a good speaker. It's just, the fact that it's one, and the fact that if you happen to cover it up, the audio is pretty much muffled out on it. Next, I didn't really care for the fact that there's not what I consider to be a large amount of accessories for this phone. Now, I'm not talking about accessories like chargers and things like that. You can find chargers, but I'm talking about cases. With the exception of things like the OtterBox, you can find those in pretty much every single store. But if you just want a basic case, something that's going to protect the back and maybe the front of the phone, you're going to have to look online. I ended up going to 3 different places. I was in the AT&T store. I wasn't going to buy a case there simply because of the price that they charge. I ended up going to Target. They had absolutely none. I went to Walmart. They didn't have any. And I ended up settling going into Best Buy and getting this case right here. And again, it's a Belkin shear shield case, and it gives you access to all of your ports and everything. But the only problem is it only provides protection for the back of the phone. There's no screen protection. So where your phone goes in, and you just sit it in there and push it in. And there you go. But like I said, there's no protection for the front of the phone. So that's an issue there. And it's really kind of shocking, because this is, Samsung's flagship Note device. And when you compare it to something like the iPhone 5, there are cases everywhere. There's Mophie cases. There's cases that provide protection for just the back, protection for front and back. There's all kinds of cases and accessories that you can find for the iPhone 5. Next, and this is going to be pretty much for any phone, I didn't care for all of the AT&T bloatware and the fact that you're not able to delete it unless you root the phone. And you can disable it and it'll still be on the phone, you just won't see it, but it's still there taking up space. I wish they'd really develop something or come up with something to where we can get rid of that stuff, or AT&T would just keep it off, because it does nothing but bloat up the phone. And this had even more bloatware than my S3 did. Next thing I didn't really care for is the stock mail app. It's serviceable, it's passable. You can add whatever email accounts you have to it. You can add however many you have, and it'll show here. But to me, it's just not as polished as the iOS mail app. So comparing this to the mail app that's on my iPad, two completely different stories. I never have issues with the mail app on the iPad. On here, and even going back to my S3, I'd have issues where sometimes, even though you have the mail set to sync, sometimes it'd show up, sometimes it wouldn't. And right now on this phone, I have Yahoo as well as Gmail. My Yahoo always shows up in the stock mail app, but my Gmail will only show up in the Gmail app. I've never had any Gmail show up in the stock mail app. So like I said, it's just not as polished as the iOS mail. Next, Flipboard and their new program that they have on here called My Magazine. Now the way you access My Magazine is you just swipe up from the bottom of the screen, and it's sort of like a news aggregator. It brings in different things that you like. Right here in the settings, you've got news, personal, and social. You can set those up, and once you do, it begins to populate this stuff. And to me, I've given it a little use, but really it's not much different than Flipboard. And it's kind of redundant to me to have both of them on here. I mean, I'd say have one and get rid of the other. Or really, I'm not really getting too much use out of it. I go through here, and even though I, put in different things that I'm interested in, it's still bringing in a bunch of crap that I'm not going to read. So, I don't know, I'm not really getting the point of that. Somebody does, or somebody enjoys it, you can post a comment down below. And then, like I already said, Flipboard already comes installed on the phone, so didn't really see a point to have both of them on here. The next thing that I dislike, I noticed there's a feature in here where when composing emails you can use the S Pen, and I noticed that there's an occasional lag when doing so, and I'm sure a lot of you who own this phone may have noticed it. And not just with emails, but with writing period. If you get too far ahead of the phone, there'll be a short lag, but then it'll show everything that you wrote. And the detection on it is really good, but it's just the fact that there's that lag as you're writing. Next, and this is a minor thing that I didn't like, the charging cord. The charging cord on this phone is very long. The only thing is, it's not color coded to the phone. So I got the black phone, and my cord was white. I just thought it would be a little bit better if they went ahead and they made the cords color coded to the phones. That's a just a personal preference, I guess. It's really up to them and how they decide to do it. But I guess just a personal preference would be to have, a black cord for a black phone. If you're one who happen to get a pink one, get a pink cord. And this is, like I said, this cord is a whole lot better. And the fact that it's a USB 3.0, this phone charges very fast. I've noticed that it actually charges much faster and better than my older phone, which is the S3. The S3, the issue that I had with it was the cord that came with it actually stopped charging. I could have this phone actually plugged up and I could watch the battery literally drain while it's sitting there on the charger. And I didn't understand it until I ended up switching the cords out. So I ended up using a cord that I had for a car charger, and it charged the phone pretty quick. However, when I tried to use the same cord on this phone, it didn't charge as fast. So the stock cord that comes with the Note 3, USB 3.0, works a lot better. So the next thing that I dislike about this phone is the fact that when you look here, matter of fact, let me open it all up. When you open here and look at all your toggles, you'll notice, if you look at mine, you'll see that there is no mobile data toggle. And I kind of complained about this a little bit when I was dealing with the Galaxy S3. Matter of fact, I think when Android 4.1.2 was released, I noticed that my mobile data toggle disappeared. And I talked about it in that video. Well, I thought that they would have fixed that and put one on here. They haven't. Now, some phones, don't get me wrong, some phones do have it. I've seen videos where people actually have it, but mine doesn't. And I don't know if that's an AT&T thing or what. So if you end up getting a phone without a mobile data toggle, you're going to be forced to go and download something like what I have here called Notification Toggle, where you can actually put one in there. You can put a, right now I'm on Wi-Fi, but you can put a mobile data toggle switch on there. The next thing that I dislike is the fact that you ended up getting inaccurate battery stats. Say, for instance, a couple days ago, I took my phone off the charger, and shortly after I got to work, I ended up rebooting it because it was using a lot of RAM and I wasn't really doing anything. So when I rebooted it, about an hour after I rebooted it, I wanted to check and see what my screen time was. It said I only had an hour, when in actuality I had a little over 2 hours. So I noticed that, it does that if you happen to cut the phone off. My next gripe is apps. Android boasts better than 900,000 apps. And, having 900,000 apps, the number sounds good, but just because you have 900,000 doesn't mean that they're all good or they're all quality. Too often you still come across apps that are not optimized to take full advantage of a phone this size or a tablet. So, look how much screen size you have available to use in this game. And you've got a 5.7-inch screen, which with only about 2 inches of space being taken up, and you had that massive amount of black space around the game. That to me, that's one of the areas that, despite the fact that Android has come a long way, it's still one of the areas that they severely lag behind iOS. It doesn't matter if you get on their mobile computing platform as well as their desktop. Apps are optimized for both systems, and they may not have the sheer amount, but the fact of the matter is the ones that they do have, they're quality and they're optimized for their systems. So I think that that's something that Android really needs to step up on. It's not so much cranking out new devices every so often and doing minor upgrades. They really need to start optimizing these apps. Sticking along the same theme of apps, the redundancy of having Samsung App Store. The App Store has some of the same things that the Google Play Market has. And I really didn't see the point of having it on here. So I think I used it on my S3, but on here, that was one of the apps that I disabled. Didn't really see any point in having it. The apps that they do have that are different from the Play Store were inferior in quality, and they're with apps that I'm not going to use. So wasn't any sense in keeping it. The next, and I'm sure a lot of people can agree with this, the next thing that I dislike, and it's not just with the Note 3, but it's with Android in general, is Knox. Knox is one of the things that I noticed shortly after the Galaxy S3 got the 4.3 update. Knox is one of the things that I noticed that started really draining my battery, and it's one of those things where you couldn't turn it off, you couldn't disable it, you couldn't do anything with it, and you really, for me, I fully don't know what it does. I know it sits there, takes up space, and drains the battery. So that's one of the things that I'm really hoping that they either explain the full use of or give us the option to get rid of. Next, and we're coming close to the end of things that I dislike. If you see here, the screen is pretty bright, it's very vibrant, but we're inside. When you go outside, the screen is still too dim. You have to turn the phone all the way up. Now with the phone like this and with the battery, you know, it's not going to hurt you having the screen up that high, but still, you shouldn't have to turn the screen almost to max brightness just to see it. And then there's even the thing where if you happen to put it on auto bright and go outside, it's still going to dim it. It's still not going to be bright enough for you to see what you're doing. So that, I don't know what's going on with Samsung's brightness feature, but I think that that's something that they really need to look at. They need to look at what iOS is doing, look at what HTC is doing, do something, you know, other than leaving it the way it is. One of the other things that I noticed here, it's not doing it now. I noticed that there was a lag whenever going into or coming out of sleep mode. So right now, it's not seeming to do it. Okay, here's my home screen. There it was. It just did it. Okay. So there was a short lag when coming into or going out of sleep mode. So I guess it really depends on when you're doing it and what's how many apps are going on or whatever. Alright, and the last thing that I dislike about this phone, and this is a minor thing, I mean, I guess you can actually fix it, but the fact is, when you go into camera mode and you switch to do video recording, you'll notice that the phone automatically starts recording. There's no button that you hit for it to start recording. As soon as you hit record mode, it starts. I like the way the S3's camera feature was set up, and that you could switch to camera and decide whether or not you want to shoot pictures or video. If you shot video, you could go into it and then press the button again and it will start recording.